I'm showing you figure
Ganda lang.
3.1. This is the communication process. So we finished discussing all the elements of this. And now you can see here. In this part of the communication process, there is a bridge. Okay? There is a bridge between the sender and the receiver. And in here, this is a very important part in the communication process because the understanding of the receiver that message depends here. Okay? Now, if there are barriers to communication, we will discuss later on what are these barriers to communication. If there are barriers here, okay, present in this area, there might be some reasons that the receiver will not get full understanding of the message of the sender. So that is what we are going to discuss today. So we have the noise or the barriers to communication. So you know already what noise is. Okay, so noise are considered as barrier to communication. So we will see later on what are these barriers to communication. Barriers mean something that stops, something that controls, or something that will not allow. Okay, so sometimes you can see barriers along the way. Now you understand what is a barrier? Okay, for example, this is the highway. Okay, and there is a car here. Now sometimes they put barriers here. Okay, so that you will pass like this. Okay, going there. You see it is not red. It is just like orange. The color is orange, but it is a barrier. They put that. Sometimes they put this to, okay, to not allow you to pass the road. So we call that as barrier or blockage. Okay, Abdallah, yes. Preventing. So that is preventing from passing according to Ali. Yes, that's correct. So we call this as barriers or blockage or something that will stop, something that will prevent communication, or it will prevent the meaning of the message from the sender that be understood by the receiver. Okay, so that is what we call as barrier. Okay, these barriers to communication emerge from both the physical environment and individuals' emotion. Okay, so remember that the barrier of communication is not only found in the environment, but it is also found in the emotion of the individual. Okay, so that is where we can find the noise. Okay, how this barrier to communication will affect communication? Okay, that's why it is called as barrier or noise because it prevents, okay, it completely prevents communication or there's no communication at all. Or sometimes it is partial or part only, partial filtering. So remember what is filter. Okay, for example, this is the road. If they put only here or here, sometimes we call that as partial filtering. But if they total, okay, it will completely prevent communication. Sometimes they filter, but it is only partial. Not all will be filtered. Not all will be prevented. So we call that as partially filtering it. So this is what the noise can do in the communication process. Okay, we call that as barriers. And later on, we will identify what are these noises, what are these barriers to communication. Okay, as a result, if there are barriers, either complete or either part only, it will give incorrect meaning. Okay, when we are talking about communication, there are many types of communication. We have verbal, we have non-verbal. Okay, for example, um, your friend is maybe 50 kilometers away from you, and you are talking to him. Okay, we call that is an example of physical environment. Okay, maybe, okay, he cannot listen well, he cannot hear you well, what you are talking about. So maybe it might create incorrect meaning, right? Because of the distance. Or, yes, Ali, sometimes it will give another meaning. Okay? Maybe you're saying something, but because you are far away from the receiver, maybe the receiver cannot get the whole meaning of what you are saying, or maybe he has another meaning. Yes, maybe because I cannot read your facial expression. So these are what we call as barrier to communication. So now let's try to identify what
teacher,
are these types of communication
excuse me,
barriers.
teacher,
Okay, one is personal barrier.
teacher.
Yes,
What does meaning
what
this
is it?
emerge? Like members,
What is it?
emerge, teacher.
Where is it?
And the first emerge in,
Emerge. It means to
like
say it came from. Where is the source? What are the sources of barriers to communication?
sources,
From
resources.
where? From where are these barriers of communication? Got it? Emerge from where?
Yes, I get it.
Okay, what are these types of communication barriers? First, we have personal barriers. Remember what I said a while ago? So, barriers of communication come from individual emotions. Okay, so that is now what we call as personal barriers. They emerge or they arise. So, that is the meaning, Muhammad. Emerge means arise. Okay,
Like
they
arise,
arise from
arise
human
of
emotions, values, and poor listening habits. Okay? So these are types of personal barriers. We have human emotions. Our emotions can also be a barrier to communication. Why? Because, like for example, if you're angry and then somebody is talking to you, even if the words are good, sometimes we incorrectly we correctly interpret the words, or sometimes you cannot. Yes, Abdallah, shyness. Yes, for example, sometimes you are shy to say something. Well, the receiver maybe cannot understand well because you cannot express those words. Those are personal barriers. Okay. Number one is human emotions. Sometimes, okay, because of our emotion, even for example, your friend is talking to you nicely, but because you are angry, so you might consider his words as not good, and you are going to get more angry because of the emotion. Okay? That's why human emotions can be a barrier to communication. Okay? Sometimes values, your value, okay? Your friend is telling you a joke, but because this joke has two meanings, and sometimes your value is that you are very conservative, sometimes you don't like the joke. You don't like to listen to him because of what he is talking. Or sometimes because you have poor listening habits. So you are not concentrating during the conversation, during the communication. So what happened? You were not able to listen well to the other person. So you did not get the full meaning of what he was saying. So these are considered as personal barriers. Okay, now under personal barriers, we have what we call a psychological distance. Okay, what is this psychological distance? So the meaning here is it is a feeling of being emotionally separated. You are separated by emotion. You are separated by values. So we call this a psychological distance. Now, even if you are talking near to each other, but you are not concentrating, your mind is far from the person. So what happened? Maybe you cannot concentrate listening to that person because your mind is not there. You are out of your mind. So is it a distance? It is a physical distance, or is it a psychological distance? Why you cannot understand that person? Yes, Abdullah, very good. That is lack of interest, or you are thinking of something. Yeah, as Abdullah said, like for example, your distance between the distance between two person is only half meter away. You are talking half meter away. So can you imagine the distance between the two person? But one cannot understand what the other one is saying. Why? Because maybe his mind is far away. He is not concentrating. He is not focusing on the communication. You get my point? As if you are very far from each other.
Yes, teacher, just not all separate, not for the emotional, also the value and listen. Is it
Yeah,
right?
even the value, your values, like for example, your interest, okay, those are what we call a psychological distance. So your distance is not about why you are not understanding each other. Okay, now there is a difference between later on it is physical barriers, and there is another one here, proxemics. Okay, now proxemics is different from psychological distance. It is also a distance, but that is physical. Okay, for example, we have a while ago two persons talking to each other, and the distance maybe is 50 kilometers, 50 meters away, 50 meters away, or maybe just say 100 meters away. So the distance from one person to another person is 100 meters away. That 100 meters can be classified as proxemics. So there is a physical distance. Spatial means space. So from the word space, spatial separation, or it is a physical distance. So maybe because of the 100 meters distance, they cannot understand each other because they are far from each other. Now, what is the type of barrier to communication? Why they cannot understand each other? It is because of the spatial separation that separates, the space that separates the two person talking to each other. We call that as distance. Okay, yes, the distance between the two persons, that is now proxemics. But in our earlier example, they are only half meter away from each other, so that is very close. But while they are talking, maybe one person is not interested, he is not listening. Okay, that is what we call a psychological distance. Another example of psychological distance, okay, two person talking, they are very close. Okay, half meter. The distance is half meter. But because one person is or has an emotional problem. Maybe he is sad because something happened to the family. So he cannot concentrate on what the other person is talking. So can he understand? Can he understand the other person? No. Remember, their distance is only half meter away, but he cannot understand the other person because of emotion. Human emotion. He has an emotional problem. We call that as psychological distance. Okay? While the other one is, okay, we call that as proxemics. So it is physical distance. Okay, now can you distinguish, can you differentiate personal barriers to physical barriers? So for physical barriers, okay, these are noise, okay, or interferences or barriers or noise that occur in the environment. Like for example, I am talking in the other room and the other person that I'm talking to is in another room. Now, can we understand each other when we are talking? Maybe no, because there's a wall that divides us. There is a wall. Okay. Now, another example of physical barrier. You know, the normal noise. Okay. So, you are talking in environment wherein there is a noise, very noisy. So the noise there is actually the physical barrier. Why you cannot understand each other? Because you cannot hear, even though the distance is very near, but because of the noise, maybe like in the factory machine, something like that, there is a noise going on. You cannot listen, you cannot hear, you cannot understand what the other one is talking to you. You understand what I mean by that physical barriers?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the other one is about the personal barrier is about emotion, about yourself. So these are the two types of communication barriers. Okay.
Teacher,
Yes.
teacher,
Yes.
you said, teacher, the distance when the distance is close, for example, half meters between the two person is not understand. Why, teacher? I think understand because very close.
Well, if they can understand because they are very close, there's no barrier in there. But for example, the other person is emotionally disturbed, meaning he has a problem emotionally. Maybe something happened in their family. Okay? Now, even though he is listening closely to the other person, but because of his personal problem, emotional problem, he cannot understand the other person because he is thinking of his problem. You got my point? We call that personal barriers. So it is not about, so the barrier, why the two persons are not understanding each other, it is not because of the distance, physical distance, but it is about personal
Teacher,
factors. Yes, Saif.
sorry for interrupt, but personal barriers about you, the physical barriers about the environment in
Correct.
uh, in all, like in the road, in the
In
personal
the
about you,
road,
how you
about
feel,
the
how
noise
you.
of the car, okay, you
Ah,
see?
okay.
Noise outside or even other people, if they are very noise,
Yes.
you see, you cannot concentrate with your conversation.
Yes.
Or if you are, for example, in the coffee shop
Hmm.
with your friend, you are talking, but because maybe the music is very loud, so you cannot hear each
Cannot
other.
focus with him.
Yeah, so that is considered as physical barriers.
Ah,
Anything that
okay.
is anything that is coming from the environment, it is physical barriers. Anything that is because of our personal thing, like emotions, values, poor listening habits, something like that, that is considered as personal barriers.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
And if we measure the distance, when it is psychological distance, it is not about physical distance, but it is like mental distance, like our interest, our way of listening to the other person. So we call that a psychological. But if it is already considered as a space, the factor why you cannot understand another person, if it is because of the space, that is proxemics. Okay?
Okay,
So these
teacher, clear.
are examples of barriers to communication. They prevent, okay, they prevent the reception or the receiver to receive the exact meaning of the message. It will modify, it will change the meaning of the message. We call that as noise or barriers to communication. So what are the sources? It can be personal, it can be physical. Okay, how about if somebody is talking to you but the voice is very soft, very low? The volume is very low. Is it personal or is it physical?
Can you repeat the question, please, teacher?
Okay, somebody is somebody is talking to you,
Okay.
but the voice is very okay. How can you say that one? It's very low.
Mm.
It's very soft. It's very low.
Environment, teacher.
Is it personal or physical?
Ah, physical.
Okay, even though it is about the voice of the person, right? It is still
Yes.
considered as physical because
The
why you cannot hear his voice?
because his
His voice
voice.
is very soft or very low,
Mm.
but you know, if even if your voice is very low, so you need to go closer to the person so that he can hear, right?
Yes.
So, what is the problem there? It is the distance. Your voice is very low, yet you are not coming closer to the other person. It is about physical barrier. Okay, so these are types of communication barriers. Okay,
Teacher, because of
another,
the body.
because of the voice.
Yes, because the body, the voice from the body. His
Yes. So it is not about psychological. It is not about the mind. It is not about the voice. It is not about the emotion. So still that is considered as physical. Okay. Now let's look at the semantic barriers. Okay, aside from the physical and the psychological barriers, now we have what we call a semantic barrier. Okay, so semantic barriers are mostly coming from limitations in the non-verbal communication. So when we say non-verbal communication, it means to say these are communication that are not spoken. So what are examples of non-verbal communication? Signs, symbols, body language, body gestures. These are non-verbal communication. Okay, sign language, correct, Abdallah. Okay, so these are what we call as non-verbal. Now, on the part of the non-verbal, there is now what we call as semantic barriers, and they arise from the symbols. Okay, we will see what are this. Now, semantic is defined as the science of meaning. So when we say science of meaning, okay, when we study what are the meaning of the words, what are the meanings of the symbols, okay, these are covered by what we call as semantics. Okay? Now now one example of semantics. Okay, the word book. How many meanings can you see in the word book? Same word, book. So book, that is,
Like teacher, dictionary.
no, it is not. Okay, now let's look at the word book. How many meanings can you identify for the word book? Okay, others can, okay, Ali says two. Okay, Hassan says to take the ticket. The other meaning is the book itself, right? Or just the book. Okay, they have the same word, even the pronunciation is same, but sometimes there are two meanings or three meanings or four meanings. Even the word fix. What else? Even the word bill. So there are many meanings of this. I don't know, even in Arabic, maybe there are many words with more than one meanings, right? Do you have that in Arabic language? Okay, you see, same word but different meanings. That's why sometimes we do not understand each other, because what I mean is not the meaning of the other person. Okay, so very good, Ali. So Ali asked, how can semantic be a barrier? Okay, like for example, I'm talking something. So I'm talking
Like teacher,
about book.
like
Okay,
technical word, teacher.
well, even common words can be included here in semantics. Okay? Like for example, I will say, no, it is not, oh, yeah. Like the word can, but sometimes the pronunciation is different. But can, that is can of food, for example, milk, or something like that, the can of milk, or can I, something like that. So you see, there are two meanings already. Suppose I told one person, okay, give me a book. Okay, because book can be a semantic, an example of semantics. Maybe he will give me the book, but what I'm that is what he understood about my word. But what I was trying to tell him is, give me a book, or meaning book me a flight, something like that. But because of the way I told him, but the word there is book. So he gave me a book, but what I mean is he is going to book me for a flight, something like that. So you see, the meaning that I want as a sender is different from the meaning of the receiver. Why? You see, the it is a barrier because the meaning from the sender is not anymore the same meaning that the receiver received. So that is how the semantic can be a barrier to communication.
Excuse
And
me, teacher.
mostly, yes,
Semantic, like teacher, when you, for example, when you prepare the letter for the another person and another and different different section of the
it
part.
is the use. Okay, it is not only the word, but it is the use of the word. So the way we use the way we use. So maybe the meaning of book to me is different from the meaning of book to you. I'm the
Yeah.
sender, you are the receiver. So
Yeah.
did we have understanding?
Now I understand.
There's no
The
understanding because the meaning of book to me is different from the meaning of book to you. So according to the definition of communication, if we do not have the same meaning, then there's no transmission of the meaning and there's no communication. Okay, so that is how semantic affected the communication process. It is considered as a barrier because it it changed the meaning. It makes the sender and the receiver do not understand each other because of the meaning of the words they used. Same word, but for the sender and the receiver that have the same meaning. So that is how the semantic can be a barrier to communication. So there's a lot of words. And I read one article, mostly the misunderstandings come from semantics. Okay, so that's why semantic is a barrier to communication. Now, another thing, still it is under semantic barrier. Okay, so we call this as jargon. Jargon is a specialized language of a group, meaning they use the same word, but for a particular group, they have different meanings. Well, yes. Abdullah said the semantic is the sender responsibility to make it clear. Remember, we have what we call as framing. Can you still remember in framing? We need to frame. We need to think of the words that we are going to use so that the receiver can clearly understand the message. Okay? But take note, it is not only the sender's responsibility. Well, I agree with Abdullah, but it is a partial. It is not only the sender's responsibility to make it clear, but also the receiver has the responsibility. What is the responsibility of the receiver? Like for example, even if the message is very clear, that is from the side of the sender. Yes, Abdullah, to understand. Okay, carefully. Like for example, the sender made a clear message, but if the receiver has no listening, has poor listening habit, do you think there is good understanding of the message? So still there is a barrier in there. That's why both the sender and the receiver has responsibilities when it comes to understanding the message. Okay, now let's go to the jargon. Yes, Ali. So the receiver should adapt with the condition. Well, yes. That's why, okay, you see, barriers of communication is not only it is between the receiver and the sender. That's why both of them have the responsibilities to come up with clear understanding of the message. Now, here's jargon. So jargon are specialized language of a, I don't know if you have this, okay, but I think some of you have already experienced this jargon. Suppose you have a group. Yes, Muhammad, it is just like using technical words. But aside from using technical words, even common words can be a jargon. because this is a special language. No, not actually a special language. It is a language that has different meaning for a particular group. Like for example, before for no, it is really a technical word. It is not considered as jargon, Ahmed.
Excuse me, teacher. Can
Yes.
I say it?
Yes. What
I
is it?
think yes, I think jargon, like for example, when you use the same word in the report or in the letter, the last report we will or you will put the word and definition of the word like that.
Not exactly. Okay, I will give you an example of jargon. Okay, for example, some groups in America, like the teenagers, okay, sometimes they use words, but it has different meaning. Okay, I will give you one example. When I say, can you give me a bread? Bread. So the word there is bread. So what is bread? Kubus, right? You understand what I mean? But what is really the meaning of bread to them? So only their group can understand it. Other people outside the group do not know what are they saying. So when they say give me a bread, what does it mean? Do you have a bread? So bread means, okay, look at the okay, bread. To the group, the meaning of bread to them is it is money. So who can understand their language, their terms? Only those who are in the group. You get my point? So it is a jargon. There's a lot. It's almost like different language and culture. Yes, Ali. It is it is within the group. So some of the groups they create their own language. They create their own meaning that others outside the group cannot understand them. Is it clear? What is jargon? Like for example,
Uh, Excuse me,
um,
teacher.
they say yes.
I think the same meaning. The bread is the money is not. I don't know. I think not the same meaning. The bread and the money.
That's why this group of people is using the word bread to
It's not
mean
the same meaning.
money. Another one, Coke.
So just the
Okay. So that other people cannot understand. That's why they use jargon. Coke, for example, for you, what is Coke? It is cola, right? Yeah, Ali, it is just like a puzzle that other people cannot understand. So they use words so that other people cannot understand. Like for example, Coke. What is Coke? It is a soft drinks, right? It is a cola. But actually, in some group in America, Coke means cocaine, drugs. Okay? So that when these people will talk to each other, even somebody is listening to them, they cannot understand what they're saying. Like for example, one teenager will say, "Oh, do you have Coke there? Can I have a Coke?" Well, if you do not belong to the group, you will not suspect that it is what they are talking about is about drugs because they are saying Coke, but actually they mean cocaine. You get it? These are the jargons. So these are the words that have meaning which is specific only to a particular group. How about here in Saudi Arabia? Do you have groups and you use this type of jargon? Nothing. You are not doing this inside groups. The meaning is exclusive. It is inclusive to a particular group only. Inside the group, yes. Okay, so that is jargon. Okay, sometimes there is a challenge for people in different cultures, especially the symbol, right? Like for example, okay, Abdullah, when they say like the army man says 2 o'clock, yeah, every military know about 2 o'clock. It is not about look there, but 2 o'clock is where is the hand of the 2 o'clock. So he need to look at that direction. So if it says 12 o'clock, it is at the front. If it is 6 o'clock, it is at the back. Something like that. But that is already, they have already that is already a common term in military. But what I'm saying, when we say jargon, it is exclusive for the group only. Small group, big group, something like that. That do not have that can be considered maybe 2 o'clock something, the jargon. But many know already, even not military, know about that one. What is the meaning of that 2 o'clock? But specifically, when we say jargon, that is exclusive for the group. It is a word, but the meaning is different, particularly for that group only. Well, symbols, for example, symbol of money. How can I illustrate it to you here? You know the symbol for money? In some countries, it is not. What is the meaning of that one? It is not money. No, no. Symbol, hand symbol. You know the symbol, if they say okay, or for, if your hand is like this, I cannot draw it well. Okay. You know the symbol for okay? By the hand, symbol of the hand for okay? Yeah. Okay. There is an emoji. Okay, that's correct, Abdullah. Now, not all people actually, okay, not all people have the same meaning. Not all culture have the same meaning for that symbols. Even symbols, we call that a semantic barrier, the meaning of symbol. So for some, that means okay. For some, it means money. For some, it means something else. You see, it depends on the culture. That's why there are countries that symbol cannot be used because it means a bad thing. Okay, so that is a challenge for the culture. Yeah, like street language also. Okay, so differences. So that is now what we call a semantic barriers. Why it is a barrier? Because it modify, they change the meaning. Yeah, sometimes it is ASAP. There are differences, different meanings for that. So we call that as semantic barriers about the meaning of the words, about semantic meaning of the words to some group. So we call that as jargon. Okay, another thing under semantic barrier is, okay, I think we need to have a break before we continue, or I'll just finish this inference. So what is an inference? Infer. So that is interpreting symbols based on assumptions or we use assumption instead of facts. We assume. You understand what is inference? Sometimes we think that is the meaning, but actually it is not. So we assume. You understand what is assuming? Sometimes we assume words. Okay, example. So the person is smiling. You assume that he is okay, but actually he is not okay. But we assume he is good. Okay, later on, like for example, the boss is always smiling. You thought or you assume that he is a good boss. He is friendly. Yes, guessing. Yes, Mufid, that's right. Okay, that is inference. So you see, these are some of the barriers of communication. Why is it that sometimes we misunderstood other people? It is because we assume maybe that person is good, but actually he is not. So we assume he is good. Something like that. We assume. Even words sometimes, okay? We assume that he said that. So guessing, sometimes we guess. Correct. Yes, sometimes like the first impression, okay? So sometimes we guess, we assume that this person is intelligent. Okay, he can understand even deep technical words. Okay, now you talk to the person and you use technical words. You assume that he is intelligent, he can understand it, but actually he is not. So what happened? Did you have understanding? No, he did not understand you. Why he did not understand you? Because he do not know these technical terms. But because you assume that he understand these words, then that created misunderstanding between the two. Okay? So let's have a 10-minute break. It's 6:30, so let's come back at 6:40 or 6:45.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Yes, I write that as soon as possible. This collective sentence, sentence, because the meaning of word is not the jargon of because this meaning
No,
of word.
it is not actually a jargon because everybody is using that unless you have other meaning of ASAP which is exclusive to your group.
Uh-huh.
So everyone knows that ASAP is as soon as possible.
So it
Now,
is semantic.
in your group, maybe you have other meaning which is exclusive only to your group, then that will become a jargon. But if the meaning is the
Thank you.
same, but if the meaning is the same as others, then that is not a jargon. But for example, you put other meaning of ASAP, which can only be understood by your group, that's a jargon already. Okay, what are the symbols that we used in communicating? So we have words, we have pictures, and we have action. Okay, in action, we have what we call as non-verbal communication. So this type of communication is using actions and symbols only. So that means to say, we do not use verbal words. From the word verba means spoken. So these are the symbols that we use in communicating, but these are not words. That's why it is called as non-verbal communication. Okay, so under the non-verbal communication, we have again what we call as body language. So we have non-verbal communication. We do not use spoken words, but we use symbols. We use body language. So body language means communicating meaning with one's body in interpersonal interaction. Okay, so that is another symbol of communication. Okay, so what are the symbols that we use in communicating? Okay, we have words or spoken. So words can be spoken or can be written. So words can be spoken. So what is spoken? Using our mouth, okay, by saying spoken. And words can also be, it can also be written. So it can be spoken, it can be written. Okay. Now, so okay, so words. So we will skip this. So it is about words like context. Okay, sometimes words have different meaning in different environment, or sometimes words can be bad or good depending on the culture. So we call that as social cues. And we have readability, how the way you write. Okay, so these are some of the things that we need to consider when we use words to communicate. So first,
Excuse me,
we need,
teacher.
yes,
What does mean this surrounding environment surrounding? What does mean this word?
surrounding environment, surround, around us. Okay, so these are the things that we need to consider in using words to communicate. First, the context. When going to use the words? Situation. So context means situation. Sometimes the word's meaning can change depending on the situation, depending on the environment. That's why we call that as context. Another thing is social cues. When we say social cues, it depends on the user. It depends on the receiver. Sometimes same word that sometimes the meaning become positive, sometimes the meaning become negative, depending on the culture, depending on the society. So it can be positive or it can be negative information. It depends on the society. It depends on the group of people. Or sometimes words are affected by its readability. From the word read, readable. For example, if I'm going to write something here, okay, so I wrote fish, but because it is not readable, it lost the meaning of the word. So that's why we need to, when we are going to use the words in communicating, we need to determine where are we using the words? What are the situations? What are the environment? It is very important. There are certain words that you cannot use in certain situations, or you cannot use these words in certain environment. That's why when we say context, sometimes it modify the meaning of these words depending on the situation, depending on the environment. Okay. Sometimes these words can be positive or sometimes it can be negative. Okay. For example, if I say you failed in your exam. Maybe some of the students take this as negative. Some students may take this as positive, like motivating them to study more. For others, it is a negative. You see? Same message, but it can be positive, it can be negative to others. Okay? So that is about words. And how about for actions? So we discussed nonverbal communication. Okay, now in using action, it says here aspects. Failure to act is an important way of communicating. So when we use action, it says here that if we want to communicate something but we failed to illustrate or to show it in action, sometimes communication failed. So it says here failure to act. Okay, so it is important that sometimes like when Abdullah said, like when I say when I say to someone you are intelligent, when he do something really stupid, okay, sometimes it can be negative, it can be positive. It depends on the person how he understand the message. But that's yeah, that's right, Abdullah. Okay, sometimes when we communicate, even if we use words, because in communication we make combinations. We use words plus action. Sometimes we use words plus picture. That is better. Okay, they will understand better. So if words alone, sometimes they cannot understand. But if we are going to combine it with picture, or if we are going to combine it with action, it will become the meaning of the message will become clearer, can become more understandable. Okay? Now, why is action is very effective? Okay, look at the second one. It says action speaks louder than words. Okay, even though you are using words, but the action is different, which one is more understandable? You are saying, okay, you are intelligent, but in your facial expression, it says differently. Okay? Sometimes you say, I am not, I am feeling good, but in your facial expression, it doesn't show you are good. So we don't believe sometimes that you are in good condition while your facial expression that is considered as non-verbal communication is not telling you or is not telling that you are good.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
I can't understand this about the aspects. The 2
Aspects, it
points.
says here, one aspect in non-verbal, it says, failure to act is an important way of communicating. Okay? So that means to say, we need to consider that when we talk, when we use words, sometimes we need to combine it with action. Okay? Because if you are saying something but you failed to act, sometimes the meaning changes. Like, for example, you're saying, sometimes there are words like, okay, how are you going to say, go to this room? So you are not only saying words, go to this room, but sometimes we use our hand to point out the room, right? So it is not only the words, but we need to act, we need to point, we need to use our arm to point that room. Okay? Now, the second one is actions speak louder than words. Sometimes, instead of saying, we just act it because action is more effective than words. In most of the time, action speak louder than words. That means to say,
Like tone,
actions are more effective way of communicating than words.
like teacher, tone when you teach the same word. For example, you sometimes arise your voice, some word. It's like tone about this.
Well, yeah, but you see, okay, instead of using words, sometimes you use symbols, right? Actions. Yeah, Abdullah said, like laughter, it's better than say it is funny. Yes, you see, if you are if you are smiling, something like that, so there is already a meaning to that. Sometimes we don't use words. Sometimes we use more action than words. Okay, but take note, sometimes we have what we call as credibility gap. What is credibility gap? So it is difference between what is said and what is done. So you see, if you are using both words and actions, they should go together, right? But if it is not, then there is a credibility gap. Like for example, you are saying, I'm fine. But in your action or in your facial expression, you are not fine. So there is what we call as credibility gap. You understand what is credibility gap now? It is what you are saying is not what you are showing. You experience that one? Sometimes you are saying something, but the action is different. You are saying, I'm angry, but you are smiling. You see, smiling is considered as nonverbal. When you say, I'm angry, that is words, verbal. So that means to say you are lying. So there is now what we call as credibility gap. Okay?
Like teacher, what you're saying is different than really.
What you are saying, it is not about lying. What you are saying is different from what you are showing. Like for example, if I say I'm angry, but I'm smiling. So what is the what is the word? What is the words there is I'm angry, but the action is I am smiling. Are they equal? No, they are not. What you said is not what you are showing. Uh, Abdullah, it is not about lying, but it is a difference. It is not. It is not necessarily you are lying, but well, sometimes they say you are lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself because what you are saying is not what you are showing. So to whom you are lying? Not only to the other person, but even to yourself. So we call that as credibility gap. So body language, okay. Now let's proceed to the direction of communication. Okay, now there are directions of communication. So you know what is direction? Is it going up or is it going down? So that is directions of communication. Okay, we will just get the
Teacher,
overall, the
before
general meaning of this. Okay, I will just take up what are important things here. Okay, so we have several types of directions of communication. So we have downward, we have upward, we have lateral. Okay, when we say downward communication, okay, by the way, these are directions of formal communication. Now, there are formal communication and informal communication. Now, what is the difference between formal and informal? Anyone? Okay. Now, formal communication
Like
follows the structure of the organization. We were discussing about the structure of the organization before. Okay, this is an example of structure of the organization. Okay, so this is the general manager or the highest manager, followed by okay, the middle manager, and these are the staff. So this is the formal structure of the organization. Now, formal communication is a communication in the organization that follows the structure of the organization. Like, for example, if the manager is going to give a direction or instruction to this employee, is he going directly to the employee? No. Okay? So, in formal communication, what the general manager is going to do is he is going to give the instruction to the manager of this employee until it will reach there. Similarly, if this employee is going to submit a report to the highest manager, is he going directly to the manager? No, he is not. So he need to follow the structure of the organization. So how do you call that? We call that as formal communication. There is a chain. Yes, correct, Abdallah. There is a chain of command, or it will follow the structure of the organization. But, okay, we cannot avoid also that sometimes we need to tell the highest manager like what happened in outside the organization. Say, for example, this highest manager and this staff or this employee are cousins. So sometimes they meet and they talk, they exchange information, and it doesn't follow the structure of the organization. Now we call that as informal communication, wherein this employee can go directly to the highest manager, but of course, the things that they are going to discuss are not official. Okay, so these are what we call as formal and informal communication. If we are going, okay, take note, if we are going to follow the structure of the organization in giving communication, then we call that as formal. If we do not follow the structure of the organization, then that is called as informal. Now, informal communication, because we are saying about formal communication, we have directions. Okay? Now, we have downward communication. So what does it mean by downward communication? From up, down. Okay, from here, from the top, going down. That is downward communication. How about from this employee going up? How do you call this?
Yes,
That is
teacher.
from down
Teacher,
to up. So we call that
because
as upward communication.
the message from the up, and after that go the down, like the supervisor
Yes,
versus supervisor
from up, from here,
is down.
from here, going down, we call that as downward, going down. But if it will go up to the highest level, we call that as upward communication. How about the communication from, for example, this manager is going to communicate with another manager in the same level. How do we call that? That is what we call as lateral. Okay? So we have downward, we have upward, and we have lateral. So okay? So here, downward communication is the flow of information in the organization from higher to lower levels of authority. Okay? So that is downward communication.
Teacher, you
Okay,
can
how about
write the lower. Yes, teacher.
yes?
You can write the word about the loyalty. For example, send the same level of the
That is
sheet of
lateral.
organization. Yes, what
Yes,
what
you can communicate.
the word where I can get it later.
Which one? It is here. Okay, now that is downward from up to down. So that is the flow of communication. Now, how about the upward communication? So when we say upward communication, it is from down to up. Okay, here is the lateral. This is lateral. So it says communication across chains of command or at the same level. So lateral, same. So the level is the same. So we call that as lateral communication. Okay, so these are the things that you need to remember in the direction of communication. If it is coming from up to down, it is downward. If it is from down to up, it is upward. If same direction, same level, it is lateral communication. So these are the things that you need to remember for the direction of the communication. Okay, so others, okay, just read figure 3.5, how to, sorry, I think that is the other one. Okay, 3.4, guidelines for effective listening. So you can understand this, how to become a good listener. Like for example, stop talking while others are talking. Okay, make the talker comfortable. Okay, show a talker that you want to listen, so show him you are interested. Number 4, remove distractions, especially mobile phone. So while you are talking, okay, hide your mobile phone, put that in your pocket. So do not use mobile phone while you are talking to others. Okay. Number 5, empathize with talker. That means to say, put the feeling, okay, feel the feeling of the other person, the talker. So empathize means you need to, okay, you need to empathize means you need to feel the feeling of other people. So for example, somebody is talking and he is sad, so don't laugh. Okay? From employees to the manager at the same level. Abdallah, what is it? From the employee to the managers at the same level? You say from employee to manager, that is already upward.
Yes, yes. I wrote this before.
Yeah,
5
yeah,
minutes.
it is. Yeah, but same level, that is lateral. So empathy means feeling, okay? Feeling,
Like teacher,
okay?
emotion about the receiver or the sender. I think
Yeah,
sender.
the emotion of
Sender.
the sender. For example, if the sender is sad, for example, then like you're talking and he is sad, he is telling you a sad story, his problem. So you, as a listener, what are you doing? Empathize with him. So you need to feel that you are also sad. You need to show that you are also sad. You don't need to laugh. While he is telling a sad story, you are laughing. So that is not. Okay? And be patient. Okay, wait. So these are some of the guidelines for effective listening. Okay, so what are the other things here? So these are not anymore included. Okay, I think the last one is informal communication. Grapevine. So the last one is about grapevine. So remember what I said a while ago, that sometimes communication doesn't follow the formal structure of the organization. So some employees, because maybe the highest manager is their relative, their cousin, sometimes even at work, they can go directly to the manager without passing through the structure. But these are considered as informal communication. And the message that they are exchanging is not formal. It is not official. So they can talk about their lives. Okay? So those are classes. So I think this is now the end of our class session. So I will just maybe send you some of the recorded lectures so that we can make our discussion next week easier and faster. So you need to watch the videos also that I uploaded so that you can understand what is motivation.